welcome to More Time in the Kitchen. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make Cranachan, and as the thumbnail would suggest, I'll be teaching you a few Scottish insults. So I'll be teaching you how to make a traditional Scottish sweet while also throwing a bit of salt. So I've just got a little list here of Scottish insults, and yeah, I think this is going to be at least a two-parter. So anyway, let's get cooking. Okay, so I want to start by saying this recipe is so easy, any numpty could do it. So that's our first word, numpty. So numpty is like an idiot, stupid. Numpty's kind of, it's not that insulting. You'd say it isn't like, you numpty. You know, like if someone's screwed up a little bit or like done something a bit silly, but you know, you don't want to genuinely offend them. You know, it's sort of a bit of banter. I think that's why we've got quite so many insults really in Scotland, is because there's sort of varying levels of how insulting you want to be and what word you would use in what circumstance. So as well as the word numpty, we've got the word Egypt, and that's when you're a bit more annoyed with them, like they've genuinely screwed up. You're like, oh, you Egypt, like what have you done, you Egypt? Then we've got doty, as in like, oh, you doty cow. You're calling somebody like, so like they're a bit airheaded. And then if you want to say that somebody like looks dumb, like they've got sort of a gormless looking face, you'd say they're glaikit. I love that word, it's such a good sounding word, just glaikit. Like it really sounds like an insult, like those sort of harsh letters. But yeah, it basically means when somebody just looks dumb, like they've got a dumb look on their face, like they're just out of it, like zoned out, spaced out, whatever. Like they're like, that sort of thing. Right, so let's actually get on to cooking. So I've got my oven preheating in the background at 180 degrees Celsius. You can probably hear it whirring away. I've got a baking sheet here which I've covered in some tin foil, because I always do that because I'm lazy and it means that I don't have to wash them every single time I use them. I've got my first three ingredients here as well. I've got oats and I've got walnuts. Now the oats, you can use whatever variety you happen to have at home or whatever is available in the local supermarket. I've got rolled oats and I've got some pinhead oatmeal. So you don't have to use rolled oats, you can use like the whole oats. I like using these two because these are softer and these are harder. So you've got two different textures going on there. The walnuts as well, these actually aren't a traditional part of the recipe, but whenever my mum makes it, she adds these and it adds a bit of crunch. So then you've got three different textures going on there. So I'm just going to lay all my ingredients onto the baking sheet. We'll start with the Quaker oats, the rolled oats, sorry. So I think I want to get about 2/3 of the rolled oats to 1/3 of the pinhead oats. So I want it mainly soft and then, you know, just adding a little bit of crunch. So I'll try to give more precise measurements in the recipe below, but really it's the sort of recipe where, you know, nothing's really too precise. And again, just showing quite how lazy I am, I'm not going to bother even chopping up the walnuts. I'm just going to sort of crumble them in my hand. Just get little chunks. So we're just going to get a bit of bite throughout the Cranachan. Another slightly non-traditional ingredient I'm going to use is some light brown sugar, which I've opened upside down because I'm an Egypt. So I'm just going to sprinkle that on top. Another spoonful. So yeah, there is honey as well in the recipe, which we'll be adding to the cream later, but I just like that added sweetness. If you like your food not that sweet, if you've not got much of a sweet tooth, then you don't have to add it. I like to add more sweetness here to the dry ingredients rather than to the cream, to the wet ingredients, because obviously the more wet ingredients you add to the cream, the more chance there is for the cream to separate, to split, and to go sort of watery. Right, so you're going to put this in the oven for about 15 minutes, but keep an eye on it. Watch for anything burning. I think the walnuts are probably the most likely to burn. The sugar generally holds up okay, it doesn't tend to burn, but you want the oats to be slightly darker in colour, and you'll be able to smell them as well. They'll have a slightly nutty smell to them, so that's when you know they'll be ready. So while that's cooking, we're going to prepare our raspberries. I've got a punnet of 250 grams of raspberries in there. So we're going to leave a third in there for decoration, and a third I'm going to pop in a bowl, and I'm just going to mush them with a fork. So first I was going to try and not swear during this video, but then I thought, well, you know, swearing is kind of part and parcel of the Scottish language. We sort of pepper it through everything. Okay, so take for example the word cunt. I'm going to bleep that one because I know some people find it like super offensive. But in Scotland, it's not really that offensive a word. I mean, you probably still wouldn't say it in front of your mum, but you might describe your friend as that c***, or you might describe people in general as any c***. But yeah, it's not that offensive. And the reason basically is that we've got our own word which we would kind of consider to be worse. The word is fud. And it's basically, it means the same thing. It means like a lady's bits. A vagina. My English boyfriend, yes, I know, it's a Scottish dad's worst nightmare. He thought that fud was like a Scottish way of saying food. Not that I called him it, but yeah, he used to say fud thinking that was a Scottish way of pronouncing food. It's not. And no matter how many times I corrected him, he keeps saying it just to annoy me. Typical Sassenach. Oh. Sassenach is basically a word for an English person. It's pretty like archaic. You don't really hear it around much. But yeah, it's generally not very offensive, mainly because English people don't know what it means. So I've taken the oats etc. out of the oven and they're cooling in the background now, and the next step is to prepare the whiskey cream. So I've got some clotted cream here. You can use clotted cream as well, or you can use extra thick whipped cream. Be very careful if you're whipping the cream yourself not to over whip it, because when you start adding liquids like whiskey, then it is going to split. So if you're teetotal, or you're serving it to kids, or maybe you just don't have whiskey to hand, maybe it's, you know, it is expensive to buy, so yeah, you don't have to add the whiskey if you don't want to add the whiskey. That's perfectly fine. It just adds a little bit extra flavour and adds something a bit different to it, particularly depending on the kind of whiskey you get and how good the whiskey is. As well as the whiskey, we're going to be adding some honey. So just add some honey. I tried to get one that's got a bit of flavour to it as well. So again, you're adding more flavour. So I've got this fragrant complex wildflower honey by Rouse. So I'm just going to add a bit of honey. I'd say about a tablespoon of honey. So the whiskey I've got here, obviously it's in a bonny looking decanter at the moment, but it is Cranachan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a whiskey made in Glasgow and it's American oak. So I like this one because it's actually slightly sweet and it's got sort of like vanilla tones to it. So I like it for this recipe. So my advice to you is to start with a little whiskey and then add more if the cream sort of allows. If you see it looking like it's going really runny or it's about to split, then abandon ship and just stick with however much whiskey you have in there already. Because you're better with it tasting slightly less of whiskey than having split cream. The clotted cream obviously is not really going to split, which is why I'm using it. It's a little bit safer, but it will go less thick. It'll be more runny. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a taste just to see how strong the whiskey is. Obviously, I don't really want to add any more whiskey to that because the cream is fairly runny already. I don't really want it any runnier than that, but we'll have a taste anyway. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. That's got a good strong whiskey flavour in there, and you can taste the honey as well. So I'm happy with that. So we've got all of our different bits prepared, so it's just time to arrange them all together now. So I've got these nice crystal glasses, which I'm going to present mine in. You can just put them in a bowl if you want, depends how fancy you want to get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of each at a time and just keep sort of layering them up until I've got this most of the way filled. You can really do whatever you want here in terms of how you put it together. You can maybe like put it together in layers, something like that, if you're a bit of a fandan. Fandan is basically someone who's a bit like la-di-da, you know, someone a bit sort of posh and shows it, if you know what I mean. Basically like...
We'll not be travelling through there.
Indeed we will not be going through there, Gary. As the Bantwood puts it, you'll have more fun at a Glasgow stabbing than an Edinburgh wedding.
Too true, James, too true.
So here's the finished result. I quite like this look because it's still sort of rustic while being a bit more refined, and you get that nice splash of colour from the raspberry. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is get our leftover raspberries, and I'm just going to place them on top. I'm going to put 3 on top of each glass. Some nice pretty ones, there we go. There we go. Don't those look bonny? Okay, time for the taste test. So there we go. You get a spoonful with everything on it. The raspberries, the oats and the cream. I love a recipe that sort of makes you think of home. Always reminds me of like special occasions when I eat this, because my mum used to make it, especially like on Burns night. But yeah, in terms of flavour, you get so many different things coming through. There's the texture of the different kinds of oats and the walnut. You get a sharpness from the raspberries, and you get sweetness from the sugar, the honey, and richness from the cream, and you get the whiskey as well. Sort of adds a depth of flavour as well, but again, that's optional. So thanks very much for joining me for this recipe. Feel free to check out the rest of my channel for more recipes, and if you want to see another video where I teach you a bit of Scottish, some less insulting Scottish, then I will post a link to that at the end of this video. The recipe in that one is tatty scones. Make sure to like and hit the subscribe button for more content like this in the future, because trust me, I've not even got halfway through that list of insults, so there's definitely more to come. I reckon I can get probably another 2 videos out of that at least. So yeah, more insults on the way. But cheerio, bye for now. Is super simple. Any numpty could do it. Was my hand